Dear viewers, I'm Professor Pinchas Mandell, Chairman and Chief Scientist of the Family of Israel Foundation. First, I would like to thank Professor Ruggero Santilli for inviting me to participate in the EPR debates for this international teleconference and to deliver a lecture on a very important subject in which I would like to impart very important life-saving information which needs to be shared with the masses. Information which is being withheld from the public, which can save millions of lives if implemented on a global scale. Excuse me. I would like to thank Professor Santilli for our 18-year friendship and for all that I have learned from him and for the painstaking decades of research and development and the many important discoveries that he made in the fields of quantum physics, chemistry, and mathematics. Discoveries whose scientific truths hold the keys to unlock many doors, which will usher in a new age of scientific achievements and help mankind move far away from the current junk science paradigm of lies and deceit, which are driven solely by financial greed and special interests. A paradigm which has caused much death and destruction to our planet and many of our inhabitants. The current paradigm is not sustainable, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see this obvious fact. The time is now to stand together and to shine a torch on the many discoveries and scientific truths which have been made and must be implemented by all people with good conscience. I would like to start out this lecture by having you ponder on some words of wisdom, which will reflect on some truisms which are relevant to our subject of medicine and on truth itself, which is such a rare commodity, especially these days with the global scandemic, which is completely divorced from true science, medicine, and even common sense. So here's one for people who are afraid of telling the truth because they may upset someone. Never worry about who will be offended if you speak the truth. Worry about who will be misled, deceived, and destroyed if you don't. And because we're on the subject of medicine, here's a good quote from Voltaire, who stated this 200 years ago. Doctors put drugs of which they know little into bodies of which they know less, to treat diseases of which they know nothing at all. This is very sad because it's still true over 200 years later. Here's another quote I like of Voltaire that shows the true power of nature, which is much smarter than we are, thank God. And his quote goes like this: "The art of medicine consists of amusing the patient while nature cures the disease." And here's another one by William Osler. And this is for doctors who are just starting to practice medicine or those still studying medicine, which unfortunately, as a statistic, doctors are the third leading cause of death. So it is no wonder. And this quote states it pretty aptly. "It is astonishing with how little reading a doctor can practice medicine, but it is not astonishing how badly he may do it." And that's the reason they're the third leading cause of death. Even though this is a physics conference, whose lectures are usually very theoretical, esoteric, and difficult to completely understand for most people, I would like to simplify matters. I want everyone listening to this lecture to be able to take away something valuable which you can implement in your own life. In fact, the information in this presentation may even save your own life or that of a family or friends. The various technologies we'll be exploring in this presentation are all dependent on and utilize three of the most important things that without them, there will be no life on Earth. And they include electromagnetic fields, which include light, oxygen, and water. In order to explain the mechanism of action for all of them on the human body, we would have to turn to quantum physics and chemistry. The synergy between all of them is both elegant and simple. There is no way that I could possibly cover all the immense amount of information on the subject that we'll be lecturing on today in the time that I've been allotted, because initially I was given 50 minutes and I was told now it has to be 30 minutes, so I'll do my best. However, it's important for me to touch base on everything in this presentation, even if we just scratch the surface at this time. So we'll have to run more quickly through the slides in order to cover the presentation's content. so please bear with me. This presentation will be available online and also has extensive references for those who wish to go down the rabbit hole and explore the various subjects on their own. The pictures you see before you is just some of the equipment we used in our medical center and quantum medical center. We'll go over most of them because we're short on time, so we can't do all of them. The plasma wand is also a very interesting device. It's a handheld device. Basically what it is a Tesla coil powering a evacuated tube that has argon in it. So this is an interesting device. Anyways, this is just a small example. Also, water, which we said that was also part of it. There are many health benefits of drinking and inhaling molecular hydrogen. There's just some of the benefits. It protects proteins, RNA, DNA, mitochondria, and cell membrane from damage. It increases ATP, improves athletic performance. There are many health benefits to drinking or inhaling molecular hydrogen. The Baxter effect. We are all connected. Humans, animals, plants, and yes, even inanimate objects, to a universal web of information which is completely reliant on quantum entanglement, action at a distance. Our very existence is reliant on this information field. So let's start exploring and connecting the dots. We'll start out with the Baxter effect. It's something that always fascinated me as a teenager. In fact, I did many of the experiments that Cleve Baxter did himself. I even had the honor of meeting him in San Diego many, many years ago before he passed away. But this was always something that fascinated me, and I went down that rabbit hole. I'm showing you pictures of my dogs, and why are I mentioning them? Well, I know, and this happens every day, when I return home and I'm 20 floors below, my wife or my son are always telling me the dogs are at the door barking, and they know I'm home and I'll be up any minute. So obviously we're connected through a universal field here. And this is true for all of nature, man, plants, animals, everyone. We're all connected. We're all tapped into this information field. This is information that some of you probably already know about plant communication and all the research that's been done over many, many decades, not just by Baxter, but many others. Another researcher who should definitely be mentioned, well, let's say the father of biophotonics, which is a branch of quantum biology. And he states, we know today that man essentially is a being of light. And the modern science of photobiology is presently proving this. In terms of healing, the implications are immense. We now know, for example, that quanta of light can initiate or arrest cascade-like reactions in the cells, and that genetic cellular damage can be virtually repaired within hours by faint beams of light. He also quotes, we are still on the threshold of fully understanding the complex relationship between light and life, but we can now say emphatically that the function of our entire metabolism is dependent on light. Biophotonics is a branch of quantum biology dealing with interactions between single photons and biological matter. In order to understand their inner workings in the cells and tissues of living organisms, it is probably the best solution for understanding cell function by integrating molecular activities within the living cells. Francis Popp, or Fritz Popp, is the inventor of biophoton theory and has coined the term biophotons, which refers to the coherent photons emitted from biological organisms. Biophoton theory concerns DNA as the most probable source of biophoton emissions. The biophoton ultra-weak photon emission originates from the relaxation of electronically excited states of the constituents of living cells, which are generally associated with the presence of an oxidative metabolism. that accompanies the production of reactive oxygen species, ROS. These are things that occur when we give ozone therapy and biophotonic therapy, and that's why they have such a powerful medical effect. And this participates in the regulation of a wide spectrum of biochemical and biophysical functions. This biophoton ultra-weak photon emission reflects the pathophysiological state with respect to the mitochondrial energy, ATP. These treatments immediately raise ATP, adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy of the cell. So the production goes up. And the susceptibility to oxidative stress, which it modifies the oxidative stress system, which is derived from the excess production of ROS or a lack of activity for antioxidant protection. So biophotons consist of light with a high degree of order. In other words, biological laser light. Such a light is very quiet, low noise, and shows an extremely stable intensity, without the fluctuations normally observed in light. Because of their stable field strength, its wave can superimpose and be, by virtue of this, constructive and destructive interferences effects become possible that do not occur in ordinary light. We'll skip through this. You can read that on your own. Okay. Further experimental studies have shown that ultra-weak photon emissions from the surface of the human skin is emitted in the visual and an infrared spectrum, and is also strongly correlated to electrodermal activity. That was discovered also by Pop, and this leads us to our next subject of diagnostics of the human organism by analyzing photon emissions from the tip of the fingers with a technology called gas discharge visualization. Moving on. This is Dr. Konstantin Korotokov, who is a colleague from Russia. He's been at this for decades. And essentially, this is there have been many iterations to this technology over the last 20 years. It can not only scan and diagnose a human, but it could also be used. You can see this device here, the actual space, the room, other areas where we can measure the energy and the different qualities of different substances and environments, which we can analyze. And essentially, it's analyzing the fingers, and this emissions from the fingertips is analyzed by a computer algorithm, which measures all the parameters of the organism. Here's an example of 10 fingertips. And this gas discharge visualization is a very, very accurate diagnostics of every system down to the cellular level. It also shows the bioenergetic field surrounding the person, known as the aura. You can see here the distribution of energy. Here we can also see again a picture of the aura. The one on the right side, as you can see, very vibrant, strong field. And the one on the left is someone that's undergoing a lot of stress. It shows in the field. Also, it shows chakra alignment. This person is, you can say, way out of whack. This is, chakras are well known and studied in both Chinese and Ugaritic medicine, and preceded even before them, Jewish Kabbalah discusses these meridians that are very important. Here we have more anagrams of the analysis. Shows all the different organ systems, they're in balance or not, because the body always wants to reach homeostasis. Okay, light particle assimilation. Explain the mechanism of action, how particles or how nutrients move into cells we discovered that there's a phosphorus sheath which surrounding the cells. Okay, and as a effect, it basically is transference and assimilation of light particles from the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients and other chemical elements to the phosphorus sheath. In essence, it's the only materials that pass through the phosphorus sheath are the light particles of the vitamins, minerals, and nutrients, and the chemical elements. So it's not the chemical elements themselves, but their light frequencies, which are unique to them. So light particles assimilation and the connection to phosphorus, as well as light particle emissions, because all cells release or emit light, just like lasers. Now we're coming to our flagship treatment that I've been involved with for over 30 years all over the world, called biophotonic therapy. It's an exposure of a small quantity of blood, to be exact 3 cc per kilogram body weight, which goes through a sterile one-time kit. The blood is exposed to UVC. We also add, in our protocol, medical ozone, the same procedure. We add it to the blood, then we remove the vacuum, and the blood returns to the patient, again being exposed to the ultraviolet light. And just to explain it in short, the mechanisms of action, blood is photochemical, so it absorbs the photons, and there's biosecondary emissions that are released when the blood is returned to the patient. So there's many effects, and blood is definitely a photochemical solution and one of extreme complex chemical complexity, and consequently the application of ultraviolet to this moving film of photosensitive fluid must be considered as primarily a photochemical process, and as such subject to the laws of photochemistry and quantum mechanics. There are several fundamental laws governing the mechanism of photochemical reactions, and they're as follows. This is the Gropius-Draper law, also known as the first law of photochemistry, which states that only light that is absorbed can act chemically. 2, we have the Bunsen-Roscoe law, which states that a photochemical change is proportional to the intensity and duration of the illumination, the amount of time that the blood is exposed to the light. 3, we have Stokes' law, which states that the wavelengths of the secondarily emitted rays are greater than the wavelengths of the primary exciting rays, okay, which is important. There's biosecondary emissions that go on 42 weeks even after one treatment. We also have Einstein's law of photochemical equivalence, which states that each absorbed quantum should cause one light-absorbing molecule to react photochemically. And also we have Nernst chain reaction, which produced by continued secondary emissions. As I explained, when the blood is returned to the patient, there's biosecondary emissions that are stronger than the first emissions when the blood was exposed to the UVC, that go on for 42 weeks. Also, each treatment adds to the last treatment, so it's cumulative, like charging a battery 10 minutes today, 10 minutes tomorrow. The energy is cumulative. So we're seeing mechanism underlying the complex photochemical procedures of ultraviolet obliteration, which must conform to certain known laws, although the exact mechanism may not be completely understood. But the photochemical reaction itself is a desired effect which can be utilized practically and predictably to obtain favorable clinical results, and we see that and have been seeing it for 30 years. In all those years, it has never disappointed me, and we're always seeing cases where we just said, wow, this is amazing. It's truly amazing. Here, I'm myself. There is a treatment. As the chief scientist of Quantum Medical Center, I basically had 2 simple rules. 1, the treatment had to be safer than crossing the street. And 2, that if I didn't do it on my own body and my family and friends, then I certainly wouldn't recommend it to patients that came to our medical center. So here I am during COVID time. I had a doctor come over to our house, and plug me in. I do these treatments at least once a month, sometimes several times, depending on the situation. But as a prophylactic, it's amazing. Also, I did come in contact with someone that was put it in the hospital for corona, was exposed to corona. I felt not too well for a few days, basically the symptoms, and had my doctor come over and treat both me and my wife. Even as the blood was coming back, I was feeling much better, and the next day I was good as new. So there's a lot of effects here that are systemic, biophysical and chemical effects, hematological changes, hemostatic changes, blood parameter changes, also many metabolic changes and improvement in oxygen utilization. These treatments deactivate toxins, every known pathogen. You have to remember that both UVC, or let's put it this way, pathogens, viruses, and bacteria throughout evolution never became resistant to being destroyed by exposure to UVC or ozone, and we use both of them in these medical protocols. So there are many effects on the body, which is also vasodilation. It's expanding all 100,000 kilometers of blood vessels, the activation of toxins, including volatile organic chemicals, even a poisonous snake bite. It neutralizes free radicals, which causes aging. It modulates the immune system, so if you're immune compromised, it'll boost the immune system. And if the person has an autoimmune disease or is attacking self, which is the case with the corona, one of the symptoms is cytokine storm. That's when the immune system goes haywire, just calls all-out nuclear war, even though it kills, and in the end, kills the patient. The clinical uses of biophotonic therapy are many. Viral infections, bacterial infections, and yes, we've used it successfully in Ebola and corona. There are some other diseases that it treats. There's too many to go down the list. You can read these on your own time. Let's try and get through these slides. Okay, magnetic resonance therapy, MRT. All energy is electromagnetic in nature, and nothing happens in the body without electromagnetic exchange between cells. We are all familiar with the electrocardiogram, EKG, and electroencephalograph, EEG, tests which measure the electromagnetic activity of the heart and the brain respectively. When electromagnetic activity ceases, life ceases. Electromagnetic energy controls our chemistry. Disruption of this energy in cells causes impaired cell metabolism. And if our cells are not healthy, our body is not healthy in whole or in part. The following is an introduction to magnetic fields. Okay, MRT, magnetic resonance therapy, also known as pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, and their therapeutic actions in the body. By the way, this device here it's the only one of its kind in Israel and also the Middle East. There's only about 500 of them in the world. It was a joint collaboration between us and a company in Russia. This is the only device that not only pulses the fields, it also rotates the fields clockwise or counterclockwise, depending if you want to affect the sympathetic or parasympathetic system of the body. This weighs about a half a ton. The patient goes inside, and we control both the frequencies, the pulses, and rotation, and the wave form, whether it's the sine wave, square wave, ramp, depending on the medical conditions. So basically, before a patient goes in, according to their medical indications, we type in a protocol of the different parameters, which are known for many, many years of trial and error, decades. So we call it like a frequency combination prescription, you can say. and it remembers, it saves for each patient on their file the frequencies that we set up for that patient. It's an amazing technology. Also, okay, pulsed electromagnetic fields. Okay, they're widely used these days to improve circulation and cell metabolism. The body can become accustomed to non-moving or static magnetic fields, which are generally unable also to deep penetrate the body. A pulsed electromagnetic field, however, is quite dynamic. It also is able to penetrate all the way through the body, and it creates a cascade of effects within the body throughout the entire body. It's also important to distinguish between the electromagnetic fields we use for therapeutic purposes and other man-made electromagnetic fields from power lines, microwave ovens, cell phones, which can and do cause damage to our bodies. The pulsed electromagnetic field devices we recommend and produce are all safe. Natural electromagnetic fields, which are of the lower frequency, use also Schumann frequency, which is 7, getting close to 8 hertz. It's been changing. And there you go. Well, how can electromagnetic fields have an effect on my body? Well, as we understand, electromagnetic fields affect the behavior of anything with a charge and, say, a field. Our bodies are electric. Every heartbeat generates electromagnetic waves throughout the body, the blood vessels, and it stimulates tissue at the cellular level. External magnetic fields and the normal electric and electromagnetic fields produced by the body interact. So a magnetic field passing through our whole body will have an electromagnetic effect on each of our 70 trillion cells. So as a result, magnetic fields act in a basic and fundamental way on molecules and tissue. They affect the most basic functions of all cells, human, animal, and plant included. What are some of the basic cell functions and how do magnetic fields facilitate them? Some of the basic actions of the cell are to generate energy, to eliminate waste, to repair and regenerate itself, and perform its predetermined functions based on the cell's type and location in the body. Magnetic fields cause or increase motion of ions and electrolytes in the tissues and fluids of the body. It is both easy and quick to move an ion or electrolyte in a living organism using magnetic fields. This movement stimulates a vast array of chemical and electric action in the tissues of the body, helping them to rebalance or heal themselves where necessary. All cells need energy to function. Cellular energy requires ATP, adenosine triphosphate, and is fundamental to all cells and body functions and is necessary to sustain life. ATP regulates cell metabolism by transporting chemical energy within our cells. Low ATP levels cause our cells to be sick and decrease their ability to heal, regenerate, and function properly. Through the increased motion of ions and electrolytes, magnetic fields help cells increase their energy or charge by up to 500%. Why do I need treatment at a cellular level? This is a very good question. Magnetic fields also affect the charge of the cell's membranes, which allow membrane channels to open up. These channels are like doors and windows of a house. By opening up cell channels, nutrients are better able to enter the cell, and waste is more easily eliminated from the cell. This helps to rebalance and restore optimum cell functioning. Also, it should be noted that a healthy cell has an internal voltage of 70 to 100 millivolts potential. So unhealthy or damaged cells, however, have an internal voltage below 70 millivolts. So pulse magnetic fields will increase the internal voltage, which are below the normal range. And if you restore enough cells, they will all work more efficiently. Cells of the same type come together to make tissues, and the tissues come together to make organs. So by restoring and maintaining cellular function, you will in turn restore and maintain organ function, allowing the entire body to function better. We all know that the body ages over time. Maintaining the functioning of every individual cell at an optimum level every day is an important part of slowing aging. Medical effects on the body, there are many, many, many. You can go down the list and see them. I myself, on bone healing, I fractured all the bones in my wrist in an e-bicycle accident. And I was told by the experts that I needed surgery immediately and platinum plates. If not, I would never play guitar again or never have use of my left hand the way I knew it. Well, thank God I didn't listen to them and listen to one of our doctors, Dr. Michaeli, who said, just do what we do with all the technologies we use. Don't panic. And several weeks later, took the cast off, and it was improved amazingly. Another month after that, good as new. Scanner technology. This is another fascinating device, also, which I've been using myself for 10 years. And scanner is not scanning, having to do with scanning. Well, in a way, yes, it is scanning the body, but it stands for self-controlled and ergo neuroadaptive regulator. It's basically a major advancement on the TENS, which is a transcutaneous nerve stimulator. The problem with the TENS is that it gives a constant signal, so it does block the pain and gives temporary relief, but after a while the body sees it as noise, so it ignores it. The scanner device, this is a fascinating. I discovered it when shortly after I arrived in Russia in '91. It was classified technology. It was developed by their space agency for cosmonauts. Basically, Dr. Alexander Kozyrev, this is back around in 1971, 72 when he started this. There were many iterations of the device, but they saw that, when they were giving medications to the cosmonauts, because they were recycling the urine, they were getting pure water, but there were still the chemical substances which they could not remove. So basically all the cosmonauts were on the same medication. So Dr. Karasev said, okay, well, what do we know about the human body? Well, it's a veritable pharmaceutical company. It can produce any substance, medication it needs from itself, endogenously, within the body, to cure disease. The second question that was raised, okay, if that's the case, and we know that to be a fact, well, what can we do to stimulate the body to do so when we want to, when we need to? And that is how the scanner technology was born. It's basically a biofeedback loop. It's giving pulses. These are silver electrodes, also gold, depending on indications, although not everyone can afford the gold electrodes, especially now with gold being over $2,000 an ounce. Anyways, there's a feedback loop and there's communication between the body, between the skin and the body, but basically the body is a sensor with information. It's called cutaneous integument of a living body, okay? Is the information field accumulating on the skin knows the conditions that are in the organs and the tissue. The main peripheral information element on the cutaneous integument is a biologically active point characterized by increased sensibility to any external action. Due to the correlation between cutaneous integuments, integument just means a covering, shell, organs and systems, their malfunctions manifest through the skin, as you saw also with the GDB. Also, those photons are emitted from the skin, therefore an information system. As a result, our skin functions as an information field, accumulating data of the bad organ's conditions. Acting upon this information field, cutaneous integument enables external influences upon the disordered organs and functional systems. Present-day clinical observations prove that malfunctions in certain organs, a certain organ may be eliminated by the appropriate action upon certain areas of the body. And the scanner therapy is very effective for that. If effectively applied for treatments, it treats headaches caused by vessel spasms, overstrain, contusions, nervous exhaustion, depression, pain syndromes of neurological character, muscle spasms, any initial inflammatory process, especially when you get an injury. When it's acute, it very rapidly restores function. The first thing it does. I've even seen in Russia Olympians that were in the middle of a meet, in the middle of a competition, and injured themselves. And with low-level laser therapy, which is using laser, and the scanner, within half an hour, 45 minutes, they were able to go back at it, which to me seemed quite amazing. So the skin has a unique ability to combine functions of a diverse sensor and receptor for signals which are different by their physical nature. For example, the cutaneous integument perceives signals of such irritants as mechanical, which acupuncture, massage, or thermal action, electrical current, magnetic fields, biological fields, laser ray, or ultrasound. All these will have an effect on the skin. As a receptor, skin can perceive external information in the form of electrical, optical, thermal, chemical, magnetic, mechanical, and other signals, which process it, form appropriate coded signals, and transmit them into the control system of the human body. Basically, the scanner is in a constant interaction with the body. The body is actually leading the scanner device and telling it what it needs. It stimulates C-neuropeptides, which is the basic raw material that from that the body can basically make anything. And so it's basically in a continuous biofeedback loop. And the currents we're talking about are microampere range, and really that's all. And in nature, they don't need a sledgehammer for attack. It's very low energy, and it works just fine. More is not always better. Less is more. Nature is very subtle. Only man comes at you with a sledgehammer. Cut, poison, burn. That's their paradigm. Anyways, the scanner technology is literally an electronic analog of a living thing. It's an amazing device. It affects the person on a physical level, mental level, even spiritual level. And it's a very deep technology. In fact, my colleague, may his soul rest in peace, and dear friend, Professor Tom Bearden, we also got him one of these devices, and he was experimenting and studying the device. And he actually said this device is utilizing precursor engineering, which ultimately precursor engineering will allow us to engineer reality itself. If you want to read about that, and I'll put some references of that, it's the work of Paul Dirac, which Tom Bearden liked to call tickling of the vacuum. Paul Dirac called it other things, but there's some interesting information on that. And basically, Tom Bearden said the scanner device is doing just that. Okay, the scanner may put into practice the views, this is what I say, ideas and hypotheses, supporting a unified theory of disease origin. Two similar systems, the human body and scanner, can cooperate with each other. Of course, the human body is the leader in this interaction, and scanner is a means of executing the body's commands and providing help. Such harmonious cooperation contributes to successful treatment of many diseases and pathological conditions with the scanner series devices. Now we're getting to another favorite of ours, ozone, medical ozone therapy. For those of you who don't know, singlet oxygen, when energy comes in, will be diatomic, and then if further energy is probably besides specifically UVC. UVC in the high atmosphere will jump an O2 molecule to O3 and polyatomic. We've discovered that there are 08, 09, 10, 16, so that's a chain. And that's all dependent on the energy you're putting in, how many oxygen molecules bind together. But polyatomic oxygen as ozone is very unstable. but there's a longer chain reaction in it doing its job and deactivating toxins and all the wonderful things that ozone do. This here is a machine that's a very advanced machine, down to the micro gram quantities of ozone is very accurately measured. The ozone is made from medical oxygen, and it's used in all the various different procedures for ozone. Here we have ozone sauna, which is a non-invasive way of doing the therapy. The steam opens up the pores and the ozone is absorbed into the system that way. But you should note that the minute that ozone touches blood, it no longer is ozone. Ozone O3 will, as soon as it comes into contact with anything, breaks down to O2 and singlet oxygen. So, but it's a signaling molecule. So there is a chain reaction of many reactions in the body. It's been around in the West. It's been known for over 125 years. Actually, it was discovered by Friedrich Schonbein, a German scientist, about 200 years ago. There are thousands of peer-reviewed journal articles. In fact, recently, our colleagues in Italy and Spain, a few other countries, printed articles on the amazing success in treating corona. It's truly amazing. There's a lot that can be said about ozone. It's antibactericidal, antivirucidal, antifungicidal. It's immune modulating. It has many effects. We're trying to move along here. Okay, applications of medical ozone are very many. That's why conventional medicine, pharmaceuticals, it's for them their worst nightmare, because it's not a drug, it's a treatment, and replaces hundreds of drugs, each worth billions in the world market. Now, in our medical center, in our medical protocols, we combine both ultraviolet blood irradiation, we call biophotonic therapy. Sounds much nicer. Anyways, because people think ultraviolet, oh, isn't that dangerous? Well, it depends on frequency and intensity. Yeah, blood, it sounds pretty messy. And irradiation, people think radiation. Well, it's a little different. Even ice cubes emit radiation, so not to panic. So we use this in our protocol. We use them both together. They have a great synergistical effect. They have common denominators, biophotonic and ozone therapy, but each one also has its own unique qualities. They're unique to itself. And the combination between two of them are far more enhanced, because we've done studies where we just treated people with biophotonic therapy, others where we treated them just with ozone, both as monotherapies. But then when we did them both together, we saw far more pronounced clinical results, and people healed much quicker. Especially people in septic shock. We treated people that were given hours or days to live and basically were given up on. And we had a 75% success rate in preventing their untimely death. And you would wonder why 20 years since I've been trying to get these into the hospital here in Israel, which we've got regulatory status here in Israel. Still to this very day, it's not being used in our hospitals, where in 2018, 13,500 people died from hospital-acquired infections. It's really horrible. And globally, millions of people. In the United States alone, close to 100,000 people died from nosocomial infections. So this would eliminate a lot of morbidity and mortality if used on a mass scale. It also would save the healthcare system trillions of dollars. As you can see, it's used for so many areas of medicine. There is an area of medicine that it doesn't touch: in neurology, obstetrics, gynecology, dermatology. In the dermatology and cosmetology, I know women really like that part, because it's lipophilic, so it melts fat, so it's used in those procedures. We also give subcutaneous injections of certain concentrations of ozone. It stimulates collagen production, basically irons out all the wrinkles without surgery. It's amazing. Also in dentistry, It's used extensively, extensively for those who are into biological dentistry and know about it, but it gets rid of the drill and fill, so kids or all of us don't have to suffer. Uh, but unfortunately, it's not widely used by most dentists. They still think fluoride is good for you, even though it's a neurotoxin. And it even says on the label that if it's swallowed, go to a poison control center. But we're just giving you a little bit of poison. And it was in ophthalmology. It's also very effective in treating a number of problems like glaucoma and cataract. Also age-related macular degeneration, the dry type. Not the wet kind, but the dry kind. It can be used to effectively treat that. Here's some mechanism of action. There are many mechanisms of action. A very long list. We'll go ahead. Okay, we're almost towards the end, and our surprise for water. Now, if we were to ask most pedigreed scientists how many phases of water there are, then they would tell us there's solid, liquid, and vapor. Well, my friends, that turns out not to be true. There is a fourth phase, okay, and we call it easy water. Easy for short for exclusion zone. It's a very interesting finding. Actually, it was first discovered and started to be studied close to 100 years ago, but really pretty much ignored. And as for someone who has been involved in research in water and one of the first to file patents on atmospheric water vapor processing technology, basically water from air, making pure mountain spring water out of air, I deeply researched water, and it has memory. It has over 70 anomalies, which conventional science cannot explain whatsoever. And so discovering this fourth phase of water does explain many, many anomalies. I was always fascinated by these anomalies and always scratching my head to figure out, wow, how is that possible? That's going against supposed laws of physics. Anyways, let's move on. You can notice here, ever notice you see a cloud in the middle of this completely blue sky? And, I always wondered myself, why only one cloud when the vapor rises all over in a homogeneous fashion? So why aren't there the clouds forming everywhere? Why in that specific spot? Of course, there's many, many questions to the answers, and some of them, okay, is the exclusion phenomenon general? Does it really arise from water ordering? Can water ordering explain anomalies? Yes, it does. What energy creates this order? Might these findings apply broadly? Okay, here's some evidence that exclusion zone water is physically different from bulk water. We're trying to get through quickly here. We don't have much time left. So here are the different changes there are to easy water and their laboratory verification by what methods. So, water molecules are more constrained, the molecules are more stable, has a negative charge, or has a positive, regular water has a positive charge. It absorbs light at 270 nanometers, which is interesting because it's on the far end of UVC. So it's kind of an interesting correlation. It's also more viscous. The molecules are aligned. Molecule structures are different. You can see it's a crystal, really. And the optical properties are also different. Okay. And so how is easy water created? Well, it's been shown that when you have a material here, which is hydrophilic, likes water. Okay, you have the surface here. This is a hydrophilic material. The water on the other side, or touching the hydrophilic material, will become easy water, an exclusion zone. So it's excluding also particulate matter. So we get down to very small size. Also, the charges change, as you can see here. Also, it's a crystalline structure. There's a shift here. Okay, we'll get into that after. One of the materials that's used is a hydrophilic substance, is Naphion. It's actually a product name. And here you can see the Naphion. Here you can see this is a pH sensitive dye that was put in the water. So, you can see from the different changes of pH. Of course, the colors are different, so you can see the difference between the exclusion zone water here, close to the hydrophilic material, and then on the other side, the bulk water on the other side. Another interesting anomaly here, this is water in two separate glasses, okay? And a positive electrode is put in one and a negative in the other. When an electric field is put through it, look how the water jumps from one glass to the other. There's like a bridge here. That's a pretty interesting anomaly. Didn't know water could be so stiff. Here's another example, because the many structured layers that are, the layers, because it's crystalline, becomes crystalline in this fourth phase of water, so it creates a high surface tension. You can't float a coin on regular water. Another anomaly. Here you can see that it easy collates over time. You can see this cloudy, it can even be freeze-dried, frozen. Fascinating stuff. The energy responsible for building this charge, this low entropy zone, okay, it's a low entropy zone, comes from light. We found that incident radiant energy, including UV, visible and near infrared wavelengths, induce exclusive zone growth. Because you have to have an energy input, so you say, where is this energy coming from? It can't come from nowhere. That would violate laws of physics. And so it's also in a spectrally sensitive matter. Infrared is particularly effective, more so than the other frequencies, which is great because it'll charge water day and night, because there's always infrared energy being emitted day and night. It's just heat, so it'll recharge even in the dark, better than solar. And they show the 5 minutes exposure to radiation at 3.1 micrometers corresponds to the OH stretch that we see near the surface of the hydrophilic material, and it causes an exclusion zone width increase up to 3 times. Okay, apparently incident photons cause some change in the bulk water that predisposes constituent molecules to reorganize and build the charge, ordered exclusion zone. How this occurs is still under investigation, but very, very fascinating thing to learn about water. And photons from ordinary sunlight then may have an unexpectedly powerful effect that goes beyond mere heating. It may be that solar energy builds order and separates charges between the near surface exclusion zone and the bulk water beyond. The separation effectively creating a battery. We'll see that in the next slide. This light-induced charge separation resembles the first step of photosynthesis, which happens in plants. Indeed, this light induction action would seem relevant not only for photosynthetic processes, but also for all realms of nature involving water and interfaces. Here we show a water battery, and what charges it up is light, particularly in the infrared spectrum. So here you can see how that works. So, they're putting in, when you have this hydrophilic material, it's going to create the exclusion zone, which it'll become negative, and the bulk water becomes positive. If you put electrodes in those two places, you will get current flow. Here's measurements of electrical potential in millivolts between the inside and the outside, and the Naphion, which is the hydrophilic material. Here we have current flow between the exclusion zones and the water beyond. So this confirms the charge separation, because it's separated now to plus and minus. Okay, and like we said, it's charged with light energy. Particularly, it likes the infrared band, which is good for us because that's available to us day and night. Okay, another fascinating discovery of this fourth phase of water is, will information stored in easy water replace conventional info storage? Well, it looks like it very well may be. And it's far better. Water has memory. This we knew already, or at least I knew. It can be structured. And will information storage in easy water impact health? Oh, yes, absolutely. Structured water, we know very well, affects the health of a person in many profound ways. So EM waves can impact certain oxygen atoms, and because it's a lattice and this crystalline structure, each oxygen has 5 oxidation states. And as we know in computers, we're binary. There's only 2 states, on and off, 1 or 0. So of course, that has its limitations on using that binary system as a memory storage technology. With this having 5 states, it's a huge amount of information. The storage capacity is just immense. You could keep the whole Library of Congress on a cubic centimeter of water, of easy water. Here we also show that in the easy water, which is the 4th state, 4th phase, the crystalline lattice structure shifts to the right, okay, and also at 60-degree angles to the layers to each other, kind of like a shear. Here's another amazing anomaly that we discovered with easy water. When you take hollow tube that's made of a hydrophilic material and just put it in a container of water, then water starts flowing through the tube. Quite amazing. That might radiate energy and help drive blood flow. Well, we will soon see. Here's a picture of some capillaries. You can see that red blood cells have to go single file. And so it doesn't, the amount of pressure that would be needed for that and to get them moving through those small blood vessels is not something the heart could do, that your heart would blow out. So there's some other mechanism going on here. And this looks like we've discovered the reason and what's going on there. Absorbed external energy may assist blood flow. Absolutely. Here, experiments they did on mice. The flow continued 1 hour post-mortem. That's after the heart stopped beating, so the blood was still flowing. This is also on a rat mice post-mortem, and when they, this is the minutes, time in minutes. So after the heart stopped, then 4 minutes later, they started applying infrared light, and you can see the increase of the velocity of blood flow in a dead mouse. So this is proving that it's not the heart that's pumping it, it's something else, it's the infrared light. Okay, where do we get our energy? Do we get it from food, or are we getting it from light? These are some amazing things to ponder. Thank you for watching this presentation, and we hope there's lots of takeaways for you on this. Please further read and investigate on these treatments and technologies. You can look at the long list of references, which will be in the document. Thank you. God help us all, and God bless.